including the UN Security Council and the International Atomic Energy Agency, have been provided with all the necessary information and warning. Yet, they have proven once again that the so-called 8 decades-long quest to prevent war and aggression is hollow and powerless in practice. Madam President, history will not forget these tragic days. It is profoundly heartbreaking that a peace-loving country, one of the founders of the United Nations with over 5,000 years of culture and civilization, responsible party to the UN Charter and the NPT, and non-nuclear weapon state, has been under armed attack by an illegitimate regime, no by its chief backer, the United States, but poses thousands of nuclear warheads. The United States, a permanent member of this Council, the depositary of the NPT, and the only state that has ever used nuclear weapons, murdering millions in 2 cities, has now once again resorted to illegal force, waged a war against my country under a fabricated and absurd pretext, preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. What a bitter and tragic irony. Madam President, this US and Israeli regime aggression is a clear and flagrant breach of international law. It breaches the preliminary norms of prohibition of aggression and the very fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter, namely Article 2.4, which categorically prohibits the threat or use of force against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of any member state. This illegal act also violates the Charter, a statute of the IAEA, relevant resolution of the Agency General Conference, Security Council Resolution 487 and 2231, as well as the NPT itself. Colleagues, while the representative of the United States continues to make baseless accusations against Iran, the international community is well aware of the well-documented and dark record of military intervention, illegal use of force against other sovereign states, and sponsorship of terrorism by the United States in the Middle East and across the world. The facts speak for themselves. All US allegations against Iran are unfounded, with no legal basis and politically motivated. One clear example is the horrific and cowardly assassination of martyr Major General Qasem Soleimani and his companions. He was cowardly and deliberately assassinated while visiting Iraq at the formal request of the Iraqi government. This crime, carried out by the United States forces on direct order of the then President of the United States, who yesterday again claims the responsibility for such a heinous crime. Major General Soleimani remains a hero for our people and the nation in the region for countering terrorist groups, in particular Daesh. Madam President, from its illegal invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan to its catastrophic intervention to Libya, the United States had ignored the UN Charter, shattered entire societies, and destabilized the region for decades. The people of these countries continue to pay the price for these reckless policies. Madam President, Israeli attack on June 13 and the US aerial strike on June 21 did not occur in vacuum. They are a direct result of the illegal and politically motivated actions of the United States and its European partners, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, as well as biased conduct of the IAEA Director General. Undoubtedly, the United States, the UK, and France, 3 permanent members of this Council, along with the Israeli regime and the IAEA General Director, will bear full responsibility for the death of innocent civilians in Iran, especially women and children, and for destruction of vital civilian infrastructure. Madam President, Iran was preparing for the next round of diplomatic engagement with the United States on June 15, only for Israel to strike Iran 2 days before those talks could take place. In fact, Israel decided to destroy diplomacy. The so-called offer of diplomacy was nothing more than a deceitful policy to mislead the international community. This week, as our foreign minister held talks with the E3 European Troika and the European Union, the United States decided to destroy the diplomacy. What conclusion can be drawn from this situation? From the perspective of Western countries, Iran must return to the negotiation table. But as Iran's foreign minister mentioned, how can Iran return to something it never left, let alone? Madam President, the pattern is evident. The NPT, a cornerstone of non-proliferation regime, has been manipulated into a political weapon. Instead of granting parties legitimate right to peaceful nuclear energy, it has been exploited as a pretext for aggression and unlawful action that jeopardize the supreme interest of my country. The selective double standards behavior of IAEA board and the Security Council turning a blind eye to Israeli past attack on Iraq's Osirak reactor. It assaults on Iran nuclear sites under IAEA safeguards, and its ongoing aggression is a moral, political, and legal disgrace. This shame will forever tarnish the credibility of these international bodies. With such blatant bias, there is no assurance that the other NPT member will not face similar aggression. Madam President, for more than 2 decades, Israeli, an outlaw nuclear-armed regime that refused to join the NPT despite Security Council Resolution 487, has promoted the deceitful and false narrative that Iran is on the cusp of acquiring a nuclear weapon, while there has not been even one shred of evidence to substantiate such baseless allegation. Iran's consistent diplomatic engagement made in good faith, leading to the JCPOA and its full compliance with the commitment therein with the UN Security Council Resolution 2231, demonstrate the very peaceful nature of its nuclear program. Madam President, Iran is acting within its inherent unlawful right of self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. We will take all measures deemed necessary at our disposal to protect our people, our sovereignty, territorial integrity, national and vital interest, and our peaceful nuclear program in accordance with international law. Once again, I would like to remind this esteemed body of its legal and moral obligation. If this Council and the United Nations built to maintain international peace and security fail to act at this decisive moment, they will forever lose their credibility and relevance. Israel and the United States are the chief culprits for eroding the rule of law, undermining international law, the IAEA statute, and the non-proliferation regime. However, the silence, double standards, and complicity of international organizations and some Western countries, including France and the UK, are equally reprehensible. The UN Security Council should immediately act under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter to redress such injustice and gross violation by strongly condemning the blatant aggression, violation, and heinous crimes committed against the Islamic Republic of Iran, adopting effective enforcement action against the aggressor, hold the United States and Israeli regime fully accountable, place the Israeli nuclear facilities under agency safeguard. This is a historic test for this Council, for the United Nations as a whole. Every state and every responsible actor must rise to this occasion and condemn without ambiguity. These blatant crimes, failure to do so will lead to the gradual decline of the very aspiration of the non-proliferation regime and normalize a dangerous precedent when might our rights, right, and where the fundamental principles of the UN Charter are trampled without consequences. Madam President, distinguished colleagues, we stand at the crossroads. Let us be the moment we put an end to impunity, the moment we uphold the principles on which this Council was founded. This Council must act decisively. Silence will be complicity in these crimes. If this Council fails to act and condemn this blatant aggression, the stain of complicity will forever remain on its conscience as it does with Gaza. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank the Secretary General, ASG Yancha, Director General Grossi, for your remarks. Madam President, last night, history changed. The United States of America struck Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The United States, the leader of the free world, removed the greatest existential threat facing the free world. Just like our Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. It was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the world. So the entire world should say on record today, here and now, thank you. Thank you to the United States for removing the greatest threat to global security. Thank you, President Trump, for acting when so many hesitated. Thank you for protecting the free world with strength and with moral clarity. Now, some come here to denounce the United States and Israel. So let me ask you, where were you? Where were you when Iran raced toward the bomb? Where were you when it enriched uranium far beyond the point of civilian usage? When it buried entire fortress beneath mountain to prepare for our extermination? Where were you when Iran turned negotiation into theater and deceit into strategy? You were silent. You were complicit. You were afraid. You were bystanders. Months ago, I sat before this council and called for a coalition of the courageous. I called for a coalition with the moral clarity and strength to confront the greatest threat our world has seen since the Second World War. Last night, the leader of the free world acted with that courage. The United States acted, not just for itself, but for every nation that values freedom over radicalism, for every nation whose children deserve to grow up without the shadow of a nuclear disaster hanging over their heads. Now, the world must follow suit. Madam President, we have heard many calls for diplomacy today in this chamber. We have heard the Secretary General calls for de-escalation. You cannot ignore that diplomacy was tried over and over. The United States led that effort. Many nations here in this room engaged in diplomacy with determination and good faith. But the regime in Tehran had other plans. It used the negotiating table as camouflage, a delay tactic, a way to buy time while building missiles and enriching uranium. Iran negotiated agreements it never intended to keep. It made commitments it never honored. It answered deadlines with defiance and met oversight with obstruction. The free world gave it every chance. We gave it months, we gave it years, we gave it every possible off-ramp. Iran would not move. So it had to be moved. The regime goals was never peaceful energy. Its goal was death and destruction. Its nuclear program was not a diplomatic puzzle. It was a loaded gun pointed at the heart of the international system and the stability of the world. To those who now fake concern and cry escalation, we say, this is what the last line of defense looks like, when every other line has failed. Make no mistake, the cost of inaction would have been catastrophic. A nuclear Iran would have been a death sentence just as much for you as it would have been for us. Madam President, while Iran fired rockets at synagogues, mosques, schools, and homes, the United States acted with precision, as does Israel. Israel's targets are not cities. They were not civilians. They were not homes or schools. They are ballistic missile launchers and nuclear sites. This is a moral difference between us and them. They seek chaos, we seek order. They build weapons to destroy the world, we build partnerships to protect it. As you all know, we have already gained air superiority across Iranian skies. We have acted with purpose. We have acted with restraint. And we will act with the moral clarity that has always defined our people. Iran's reach extends far beyond our borders. It arms militias in Iraq. It commands terror in Lebanon. It funds Houthis in Yemen. It plots murder in Europe. And it threatens every capital in the West with its growing arsenal of ballistic missiles. You cannot sit this one out. You cannot condemn the firefighters while the arsonist tries to light more fires. You cannot protect peace by appeasing evil. Colleagues, Israel did not seek this moment, but when that moment came, we did not flinch. We know what happens when the world turns a blind eye to threats too terrible to imagine. This time, we acted, and this time, we were not alone. Let the record show, when the world stood at the edge of a nuclear disaster, America stepped forward. When time ran out, America showed courage. And when the moment came to confront the forces of extinction,
here at Mint, we love green, and I'm excited to tell you about a deal that will save you a lot of green. We're teaming up with Samsung to give you unlimited premium wireless and the new Galaxy S25 with Galaxy AI for $30 a month. Your friends will be green with envy, and those little green
Statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me at the outset to wish you and your friendly country to thank you for quickly calling for this meeting, and to thank the Secretary General for being here and for his righteous words at the start of this session. I also thank Mr. Miroslav Rensha and Mr. Grossi for their valuable briefings. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Security Council, on behalf of GCC countries, that include the State of United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the Sultanate of Oman, and my country, Kuwait, we reiterate that the GCC group follows with grave concern the accelerating developments in the region, particularly the most recent developments that included the targeting of nuclear facilities inside Iran, in a dangerous development that threatens regional and international peace and stability. GCC countries warn against the repercussions of the continuation of this escalation that could lead to further tensions and exacerbate risks that face the security of the region and its peoples. We call for an immediate cessation of military actions and exercise of maximum restraint, avoiding anything that could lead to a spillover of this conflict, while reiterating that dialogue and diplomatic means are the best means to address conflicts and reach peaceful solutions. In this context, GCC countries reiterate the importance for this Council and the international community to shoulder their responsibilities fully towards stopping these violations and to genuinely work on ensuring the respect of the sovereignty of states and the safety of their critical facilities, including nuclear facilities that are under the IAEA safeguards regime. GCC countries express their deep conviction that there needs to give priority to diplomacy and dialogue to settle conflicts and disagreements within comprehensive approaches that achieve stability, prosperity, and justice. And we reiterate the importance of doubling efforts that aim at finding political solutions to put an end to this crisis and open a new page of security and stability in the region. In conclusion, Madam President, GCC countries are firmly committed to support all regional and international efforts aiming at diffusing this crisis and consolidating security and stability and to preserve the interests of peoples in the region and the world. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
شكرا السيد الرئيس.
I thank you, Madam President. I thank you for and value your efforts in convening this emergency session. We thank His Excellency the Secretary General for participating in this meeting and acknowledging the gravity and the repercussions of the current situation and his calls for de-escalation. We thank the Assistant Secretary General as well as the Director General of the IAEA. Madam President, the Security Council meets today in an emergency session, and it bears upon its shoulders the task of maintaining international peace and security at a time when our region is witnessing a dangerous escalation that threatens to destabilize the world and the region. Iraq speaks in a moderate voice and expresses its extreme concern over the accelerating and dangerous developments that the region is witnessing, at the forefront of which is the ongoing military escalation and the ensuing military attack against 3 nuclear reactors in Iran. And we believe in Iraq that this attack is a dangerous escalation and a direct threat to regional and international peace and security. It risks increasing the chances of conflict and the chances of the war expanding as other regional and international parties join the fray with no authorization by the Security Council. This raises serious questions on the respect for the global order that is based on international legitimacy. Madam President, the developments that the region and the current conflict have witnessed is a true test of the rules-based international system that is based on international law and the UN Charter. Unilateral actions that bypass the Security Council weaken the prestige of the international organization and keep the door open to military chaos with unpredictable consequences. Moreover, targeting nuclear facilities, regardless of the disagreements over such facilities, is a dangerous precedent that runs counter to diplomatic efforts that aim to resolve the nuclear file through dialogue and international controls, especially the role of the IAEA in this matter. Iraq confirms that targeting declared nuclear facilities is a dangerous precedent in the non-proliferation regime and the comprehensive safeguards regime, as indicated in the Resolution 487 as well as the IAEA Board of Governance. It also runs counter with Article 4 of the NPT Treaty, which guarantees all member states the right to develop and use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes within a framework of transparency and international oversight. Targeting nuclear facilities could lead to catastrophic radiation leakage that would go beyond the borders of the targeted state and would pose a direct threat to the lives of nearby human beings and the environment, including Iraq. We note the dangerous nature of cross-border radiation leakage and how it affects the countries and peoples of the region. This is a serious danger, and we warn of the dire environmental and human consequences of this. We regret to note that this military development has narrowed the timeline and diplomatic horizon for a potential peaceful resolution. Moreover, it did not give negotiations and political attempts to resolve tensions a chance. It also prevented the IAEA from performing its technical role in accordance with its mandate as stipulated by its statute, which is to verify the nature of nuclear activity. Madam President, our region and over the past decades has witnessed repeated situations of tension and instability. Our peoples have suffered from war and conflict that have brought death upon the people and destruction upon the infrastructure and have obstructed development offers. We find ourselves today before a dangerous crossroads that threatens to ignite a comprehensive and all-out regional war, with the ensuing violation of the sovereignty of states through repeated violations of their airspace and territories as neighboring states, with the catastrophic economic impacts of that, as global supply chains are experiencing severe disruptions and the economies of the region are facing major challenges, and as threats continue to endanger maritime passages, which are the lifeline of international trade and the economy of states. Iraq, and based on its geographic location and regional role, is directly impacted by these developments. We have recorded repeated violations of our airspace by the conflicting parties. We consider this a violation of the sovereignty of Iraq and a violation of international law and the United Nations Charter. We renew our firm belief, our firm rejection that Iraq absolutely rejects the use of its territories or airspace to carry out military operations that harm the safety and security of any state in the region, regardless of the party involved or the purposes invoked. In closing, Madam President, Iraq stresses the need to reinstate trust in joint international action. The Security Council must once again be the main forum where crises are handled. We stress the importance of respecting the sovereignty of states whose territories and airspace must not be used in any military confrontation without their consent. Iraq calls for bolstering diplomatic solutions and for activating negotiations and for learning from the lessons of past crises in the region. Iraq calls for the protection of civilians from any military action that affects them directly or indirectly. The peoples of our region are looking to this council and expecting it to shoulder its historic and legal responsibilities at this crucial juncture, so that wisdom and dialogue would prevail, so that we must work together to lay down the foundations of stability and peace in the region, foundations of justice and the respect for international law and international humanitarian law. We call on all parties to avoid further escalation and to return to serious and responsible dialogue in order to maintain the stability of the region and the world. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Iraq for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.